So this talk will be about F# and serverless. So that's going to be about using Azure Functions with F# and looking at a specific case I worked on, which is FSI Bot, which I will tell you a bit more about in a second. So my name is Matthias Brandewender. You can find me on Twitter as @Brandewender. I look like this on Twitter, so exactly like me. I'm a French person who lives in California, and usually I speak around topics like the type of thing I'm interested in is typically functional programming and specifically F# and machine learning. And so this topic is a bit on a different thread for me because so I have another side interest, which is bots. I like to write bots on the weekends. And so this is how I came across Azure Functions. And so this is where this talk is coming from. So what I wanted to do in this talk is really three things. One of them is like, given that Azure Functions are fairly recent, I want to just go through it and explain what is an Azure Function, how do you go about using it, and I'm going to be doing it by building from scratch an example, so that my goal there was to show you pretty much as I could in the smallest example I could. So that's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to go to my real-world example, FSI Bot, which is like my bot, and then I'm going to talk about the places where I really like Azure Functions, but there are a couple of places where there are frictions, and so I'm going to talk to you also a bit about like what are these points or what the good and also the less good, so that you know what to expect. So the first thing is like let's talk about what is an Azure Function. This is not the current definition on their website, but like this is a talk which is going to be entirely buzzword compliant. And so the definition they had at some point on the website was Azure Function is a serverless, event-driven experience, Azure App Service, Nano Service, scale, demand, pay only for the resource. So like it's really heavily packed on buzzwords. And if you read this, like it's not entirely obvious what a function is. So you have a version which is maybe less sexy and less buzzword compliant, but the short definition or the short version of what an Azure Function is a couple of things. Like the idea of a function is code, something you want to run, and it's an event defining like when is it that you want that code to run. And then in the context of Azure, functions are actually grouped in what's called a function app, and a function app is simply like a bunch of functions which are together, living in the same place. They're typically there because they will talk together, they will share some resources. So a function app is a couple of functions together. The code part, the code part is a script. So the idea is like I want a script to run, and the event part is pretty much whatever you want. So what you want is something like every 10 minutes, I want this script to run. Every time a message pops in my queue, I want that code to run. Every time a web request comes in, I want that code to run. So a function is like the event triggering the thing and the code running. An Azure Function is serverless. So I put it in like quotation marks because in the end, it's kind of a weird notion. So of course, there is a server somewhere. The point of serverless is like one is like it's not your machine, which means that you don't really care about it. You don't have to worry about it and all these things. And the second part is also the infrastructure is going to deal automatically for you with questions like scale. You don't have to worry about provisioning many servers, dealing with them and all these things. The Azure Functions are going to do things like if too many messages pop in the queue, it will scale up automatically so that it deals with it, and when the pressure goes down, it will scale down. The other thing which is interesting in functions is the idea of like pay only for what you use. So instead of having one machine which you pay for, like if you have it for 1 month, you pay for a month. If you have it for a year, you pay for a year. What you will do is if you run a lot of code, you will pay a lot. If you run very little code, you will pay very little. So that's one thing which is also part of the idea. Practically, if you have been using Azure Web Jobs before, functions are based on Azure Web Jobs. Essentially, they are a nicer way to package it, make them more usable, convenient. And also, it's pretty fresh. So it hits general availability, I think, in November or December. So until then, it was not officially supported. Now it's officially supported. And so you can safely use it in production because it's officially supported. So this is really what you need to know conceptually about functions. Now, rather than talk more about this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build an app. And so what I try to think about what's the smallest app I could do, which would illustrate as many points about functions as I could. And so because I'm an anxious person and we live in a very complicated times, it's like lately the exchange rates have been changing quite a bit. And so the app I'm going to build is something which is going to be based on the fact that the British pound and the US dollar are changing very fast. I'm very concerned to know if the beer I'm drinking right now or I'm paying is going up or down. And so I'm going to try to build an app which is going to tell me as often as possible what's the current price of my beer. Obviously, the reason is not the beers. It's also always looking for something where I could actually have a very frequent triggering event. And so British pound, US dollar seemed like a good example. So the function I'm going to build, or the function app I'm going to build, is going to do really two things. I will want to get an update on the current exchange rate between the pound and the US dollar every 10 seconds. And every time it changes, I want to be notified of this on Slack. So that Slack will tell me currently my beer costs this. So that's what we're going to build. And so if I want to do this, I will go to the first thing I need to create some infrastructure for my app. And so the way you would do that is you would go to the Azure portal. I'm not going to do it live because it's fast, but it's still taking 2 or 3 minutes, and I don't want to wait for this thing to spin up. So if I go to the portal, I can go to the plus sign, which is right there. And if you click on it, you can choose like what you want. And one of the things you can pick is a function app. And if you pick a function app, it's going to ask you a couple of things. The first thing is going to ask you, how do you want this thing to be called? So it could be my app, foo, bar, whatever you want. You need to give it a subscription, which is like how you're going to pay for it. You need to create a resource group for it. So this is a convenient way to package together like the app and maybe other resources which are going together so that you can keep track of my app is this plus this plus this. Like this is all these things together an app. You need to pick another thing which is called the hosting plan. So you really have two options here. One of them is consumption plan, and the other one is, I don't remember how it's called, but that's fine because really, if you're using apps, you should probably be using consumption plan. And what consumption plan means is like, I want this thing to be dynamically scaling. So this is what you pick if you want the server to scale up, scale down automatically based on the work. You're going to pick where this should be located, so East US, UK, whatever you want. And you will also need to pick up a storage account. So one recommendation here is like by default, it's going to create for you automatically a storage account with a very explicit name like 35D1BBA796. I would recommend that you actually don't pick up the default one, but rename it, because at some point, if you start to have many storage accounts with cryptic names, it's getting a bit complicated to know what's where, so just give it a name is my personal advice. The other advice I would give is that here you have a little checkbox pinned to dashboard. Pin it up, because that's going to make your life much easier into finding your function app once you're in the portal afterwards. So if I do this, I'm going to wait a bit, takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and in the portal now, I will have something which looks like this, all my stuff, and here I will have a function app which will be running. That takes typically like 3 minutes to spin up. Good, so from that part on, I'm going to move to the Azure portal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building in the app I described like from scratch. So this is where I have been sweating bullets before this talk because I'm fully depending on the internet and Azure to work. So this will take a tiny bit. I'm going to be working entirely in the portal for the first section. And so like here, I'm depending on how quick the internet will be. And I think I should be good in a second. Here we go. So this is, I went to my function, now my has been spun up, and now my function app is there, and I'm going to start doing things with it. So the first thing I will want to do is so I have 2 parts. One of them is like every 10 seconds, I want the exchange rate, and then I want to post things to Slack. So let's start with posting things every 10 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want a new function. And here in my functions, I could put plenty of languages. Some of them I like more than others. I don't want to write a function in PHP, probably. You could do it in C#, in JavaScript. You could do whatever you want. I'm going to do it in F# because this is an awesome language. And I'm going to pick up, besides the language, you have a bunch of templates you can choose from. So these describe kind of you have a bunch of templates coming in which cover typical scenarios you might want to cover. So you have templates for like what happens. I want something which runs when a new blob pops up in a folder. I want something which happens when like based on GitHub webhooks, things based on queues, things based on HTTP requests. The one I want is a timer trigger. So a timer trigger is going to be a function which does this thing every time. So let's do it actually. First, I'm going to give it a name. So this one is going to be grabbing the exchange rate. So I'm going to call it like grab rate. Why not? And if I want this thing to run on a specific cadence, I have to tell it how often, like when do you want this thing to run. So in this particular case, it's defined as with a cron expression, which is like you have like 6 slots, second, hour, day, month, day of the week, and you can do things like I want this to run every Monday, every Sunday at midnight, every 2 hours, at half an hour every hour. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want this to run every 10 seconds, and I will create my function. And so now what I see here is like what I got is I got a function called grabRate. It's also automatically populated, so I have code. This is F# code, and you can see that this function is telling me I have a run function, which has information about the timer and has information about the trace writer, which allows me to do some logging. And what I can do at that point is I can say, hey, let's run it. And at the bottom, I'm going to see logs. And so the log info is showing me that this function triggered at 04, so at 11. And I would expect this to now be triggered like every 10 seconds. So let's give it a shot. And let's see if at 51:21, actually, it's interesting. It looks like it's not exactly running every 10 seconds, but now I have a function which is running every 10 seconds. Like every 10 seconds, that script will, essentially every 10 seconds, that script will be loaded, run, and then goes away. 10 seconds, go, run, and so on and so forth. Good. So progress. So now we have a function which is calling, which is being called every 10 seconds. So what I really want to do here is I want to grab the exchange rate. How would I do that? So I'm a cheap person. I'm certainly not going to pay for an external service and all these things. So I Googled a bit, and I figured out that Yahoo has a service which does just that. So I'm going to use it while Yahoo is still alive. And I just need to pass in a URL. And if you look at this somewhere, you see that you have GBP USD. And if I call it back, I'm getting back a straight XML document with many things, which are like what I'm converting, the rate, the date, ask and bid, and all these things. So what I'm going to want to do at some point is I will want to call this, get the data, and then I'm going to want to pull out the part which is between the rate, open rate, close rate brackets to get an exchange rate. So let's do it. Because I'm not very good at typing and all of these things, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a bit of copy-paste code here. And so I'm going first to grab this, and I'm going to paste it in my function. So instead of just open system, now I'm going to use web client. So I'm going to open system.net. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call the URL I just hit. So I'm going to also copy this, put this back in the function, and here. So here what I'm doing is I'm saying here's a URL, that's the Yahoo thing. Create a web client and grab this the most unelegant way possible, like grab the string, and that's going to be the result I want. And just to confirm that this is working, I'm going to do something like log.info, and I can log in the result, which should be a string. What you saw at that point also is the button save and run got red. The reason this is so is because my code changed. And so my code changed, and so the editor is telling me, hey, it changed. So now I can save it. And when I save it, I'm going to see something happening at the bottom. Is like it's telling me like the script has changed. So it's recompiling. It's telling me that it worked. And now it's like my function is running again. But now instead of showing me like it run, I can see that the hit, it's actually hitting the Yahoo URL. And I can also see here that every 10 seconds is going to be called. And I should see in 10 seconds that the rate is going to change. So like this is now working. I have something which is going to poll every 10 seconds the internet for the new rate. Good. So this is progress. We have half of our problem solved already. Let's move to the next part of the problem. And the next side of the problem would be, at that point, what I want to do is I want this to be processed, and I will want to post something to Slack. So one thing I could do is I could start adding more and more code into this function. But if you think about it, put back your software engineering hat, is like this is really not the same responsibility. One thing is calling the web, another one is posting to Slack, maybe formatting the message. I should probably have them in different places. So and this would be a good intuition. And so if you have this intuition, what you should probably be doing is creating another function and have the two functions talk to each other. So I'm going to create a new function. And the way I will have a problem to solve, which is how should this function talk to each other? And I would say, like, by default, when you have this question in functions, the answer should be a queue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a queue between function 1 and function 2. I'm going to send a message from this one, and the other one is going to pick it up. And if the other one is going to pick it up from a queue, that should probably be something which is triggered by a queue. So let's go to F# again. I'm going to go to all the samples. And somewhere in here, I will find one which is here. I have a queue trigger. So let's take a queue trigger. I'm going to name it, like, let's say, post to Slack. That queue. So now is like, obviously I don't need a cron definition because it has nothing to do with time. Now I'm talking about a queue, so I need a couple of things. I need to tell it like what queue I'm talking about. So I'm going to call it maybe like exchange rate. Or let's call it rate, actually, that's going to be even easier. And you could point it to whatever you want. So when we created the function, it comes by default with a storage account. So here, I don't even need to do anything. Like by default, I can use that storage account. So this is what I will do. If you wanted to, you could point it to another storage account. You could point it to anywhere you want, but this is particularly convenient. So here I told it, like, look, I want you to be triggered by messages in a queue, and that queue will be called rate. And so now what popped up is a template which is even easier than the one before. What I have is I still have my trace writer, which enables me to do some logging. And I have also, my run function is also taking a string, and that string is actually the input message I'm going to dequeue. So what this is really saying is like every time something shows up in the queue called rate, which is on that account, grab it out, and this is going to be in the variable called input message, which is this string. One thing I didn't show before is, I should have done it actually, is in the editor you have this little button here called view files. And so this is giving you a bit of a view on what's happening in the function. And so all I showed you so far was the run.fsx file, which is the script file. So that's the code you want to run. The second part, which is defining like what is it that should be triggering the function, is defined in function.json, which is the bindings file. And so the bindings file is a JSON file, which is pretty simple. Like there's really not that much to say about it. But in this case, like what I said in the UI before was I want something which is a queue trigger. So you see type, that's a magic string, which is it's a queue trigger. I have the name of the thing I'm going to pull from the queue. That's input message. This is the argument we just see in my run function. So if I didn't like it, I could actually rename it to say message. And I have something which is called in here, which is indicating the direction. So this is saying that that binding is going into the function. That's something I'm going to consume, I'm going to receive, I'm going to read from the outside world. I'm going to read from a queue called rate, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to save it here. And I'm going to, relatedly, because I renamed the message to message, I'm going to change the file here, and I'm going to rename this to message. And so now, like one of the things here is like if it's happening on a queue, I won't. I have and it failed. Why did it fail? So maybe I should didn't. Maybe I should not have changed this. What was that? No, that looked right actually. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do control. Oh, yes, here we go. Okay. Here we go, thank you. This was a test, everybody was following. This is very good. So now the problem I have compared to before is like I won't see if this is working because like I don't have, compared to the timer, I don't have something which is running automatically every 10 seconds. So here you have this thing which is kind of convenient. You have a little button called test. And so what I could do here is I could say, I want to push a message in my queue, like something like NDC London. Let's do that. And now I can do something like run. And what this should do is like this is going to push that message in the queue. I can see that the result was it was accepted. And here, did I rename the other one? This is so it worked here. But why is this not? So I did that. OK, so this is, bear with me for a second. Let's check that this one, OK, I renamed this one now, so this is where it's failing. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to run it. So this works, and this is good. OK, and this worked. OK, so long story short, so sorry about that mishap, but like I renamed the argument in the function JSON, so now this is where my message is coming from. This was a bit of a painful process, and I can test my queue by just saying, like, I want you to try it out with a message here. I can put whatever message I want, run it, and you can confirm that it's kind of doing what you want. So good. So now is like that queue, that function is waiting for messages to come. What I need is I need messages to be sent by the other function. So how would I do that? I'm going to go back here. And here, I could do it by hand on the JSON document. Given how this worked out here, I'm going to take the safe route. And I'm going to go to the integrate section. And so this is showing me that right now, I have a trigger, which is the timer. And I can also choose like inputs and outputs, which are other bindings I have. So in this case, what I want is I want something which is an output. And so that output is going to be something which is going to go to a queue. So I'm going to take queue storage. And I'm going to select that. This is going, so this is the right connection. The queue name is not going to be out queue, it's going to be rate because I have that queue which I now created magically before. And I'm going to call it like maybe something else. I'm going to call it like a message. That's fine. It's a very explicit name. And so now so let's do that. And if I go now to grab rate, what I should see if I go to the files is like I should see that I have now two bindings. I still have my timer. And I have a new binding, which is of type queue. The name of the variable I'm going to use is a message. Like the queue name is a rate, and it's an out binding. So it's like I have in, I have out. Now the only thing I have left to do is like I need to push messages to that queue from my code. So let's do that. I'm going to go to run. And here I'm going to add, how do I call this again? Message? Message. So I'm going to have the out binding I'm going to use here. This is going to be message. Message is going to be a string. And to be actually more specific, it's going to be by ref. So this is took me a bit of time to figure it out. So when you're trying to mutate something on the F# side, is like usually the answer is used by ref on the signature for the function. So, and the only thing I will have to do here is like, so now I'm saying like I also have a message which is going to be bound to the queue. And the only thing I need to do here is this. I'm going to do a message, which is the message which is going to be in the queue, and I'm going to push into this guy the result of what I grabbed from the URL. So at that point, what I should have is like go ping Yahoo, get something which is a string, push it into the queue, and if everything works fine, this should run every 10 seconds, but now every 10 seconds a message should pop in the queue, and so the other one should now start to show every 10 seconds a message popping up. So we'll see that in a sec. Or maybe in 10 seconds. And here we go. So now I can start see popping up. You see like Yahoo API. So my messages are actually wired up and going into the other function. So we're in business. So what we did here is like we have two functions. One of them is hitting the internet and posting to a queue. The other one is watching for the queue and doing things with it. So it was fairly easy to wire. So progress. What's next? So I have a queue. Yeah. I have a message, I send a message. So now, So we are not animals. It's like, first is like, I don't want, what I really want is I don't want this XML document. What I want is I want something which is the rate, and this is what I want to send to the second queue, to the second function. So to do that, I will need to do two things. I need to parse like this XML document and just grab what I want. And because we are not animals, I'm just not going to send like strings. I'm going to send something a bit nicer. I'm going to create a type for that message I'm going to pass around. So the parser bit is like pretty easy. I'm just going to copy it first. So this is I did it like really like the ugly way. So let's put it in the grab rate part. And in my function now, I'm going to say, I'm going to create a function here, which is going to be parse. And that parse function is taking a string. It's going to look for something which is between rate and close rate. I'm going to grab this. And so it's completely ugly, but this should work. So let's do that. I'm going to let rate equal parse. Actually, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do result. I'm going to pass it to parse, and so that should be now a float. That should be now a string, and that string I'm going to pass to a float because this is what I really want. So not too difficult. Now the next step I want is like I would want to create maybe something like a JSON message to pass between the queues. And if I want to do that, I need to, I'm probably going to want to use some form of a library. So technically I would not need to do that because JSON.NET is baked in, but imagine for a minute that now I want to use JSON.NET. How do I do it? The way I would do it is I will do it by adding a third file here. So let's do that, and that's going to be a project.json file, not fson, but JSON. And in this file, I'm going to define what dependencies I'm going to use. So that's how it's going to look. Like my JSON, my project JSON file is going to say something like I'm going to use the .NET Framework 4.6, and I'm taking a dependency on Newtonsoft.json version 9.0.1, which is on NuGet. And so now if I save this, I will see something like automatically, like at the bottom, you start to see the log starting to use NuGet restore, blah, 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 and it's pulling the dependency. And so at that point, I can start using the NuGet dependency in my code. And so I'm going to do this now. And I'm going to copy a bit of code, put it back in the run. So here now I need to keep still system and system.NET, but I also need JSON.NET. And I'm going to create like a type for my message, like nothing fancy, just a record where I'm going to have a rate, which is a float. And the next thing I need to do here is like instead of sending a string, I will want to create a message, serialize it to JSON and send it to the queue. So let's do this. Using the JSON parser, like the serialization bit. So let's do that. I'm going to create a message which is going to be, the rate is going to be the rate I just grabbed for my service. I'm going to, so I create an instance of my message, I serialize it, and now I should be able to do something like, I should be able to pass in directly my message, and this is now what should be sent on the queue. So let's do it. And now, as a result, if it compiles, of course it will compile, but if it compiles, what I would expect is on the other end is like instead of getting a big blob of XML, I should start to see pop up something which is going to be much nicer, which is going to be a JSON document. And here we go, rate 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and so on and so forth. So much cleaner. And so the bigger point here is like not the message, but really the fact that I can use whatever library is on NuGet. I just need to put it on the project JSON, and it will be there for me to use. Other side of the pipe, I will probably want to do the same thing. So I will want to grab. I will want to do two things now. Is like I will want to grab that message, grab the rate, and pop it to Slack. So nothing very exciting. So I'm just going to copy the code and comment on it in a sec. Let's go to post to Slack. Let's go to this guy. Actually, I need also to add the project JSON. I forgot that. So let's add project.json. Let's copy my project JSON. Oops. So that that other side of the pipe can also use JSON.NET. And let's change the code a bit in the run function to do something a bit more exciting than what we have. So on the queue side, I'm going now to do a couple of things. So I'm going to create the same type on the other side, which is I'm going to take the message and I'm going to reserialize it to a message. So let's do it here. And I'm also going to push it into Slack. So here I created a hook, a web hook already on my. So let's serialize it. So here, like instead, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the message I'm getting from my queue. That was like the string. I'm going to deserialize it to the type I just declared here, and I should be able to print out. Let's see that this happened. Now I should have on both ends like something which is going to JSON and then back to my message type. I'm fingers crossed, and now I have a rate, so everything is working fine. Last thing I need to do, which is not particularly interesting, just to show I can do it, I'm going to send this to Slack. So let's do that. And this is going to be the most annoying Slack bot you could possibly think of. But so here I'm going to say, hey, take the message, grab the rate. I'm going to do it completely like a pig. I'm creating like my JSON like this, like the just to show that this is right, is like the current price is. And now I'm going to create an HTTP client, send something to my webhook, post it. And now if I go to my own Slack where I talk to myself all the time, I should see in a couple of seconds that here we go. So now I got it hooked up. So now it's like every 10 seconds, like I will get a message on my phone or on my Slack channel telling me what the current exchange rate is. So I'm also going to shut it down right now because otherwise it's going to be fairly annoying quick. But the point here, so the part of the point here was like wanted to show you like how you can use dependencies, how it's very easy to wire up things together. And in a way, like in 15 minutes or so, I created an application which is not entirely trivial, where I'm calling the internet, I'm serializing things, I'm sending stuff over to a queue, which is sending stuff to Slack, and that took like maybe 20 lines of code. So that's kind of the beauty of functions. So how do I actually stop this to polluting my Slack channel? I can go here, and on the Manage button, you have two things. You can delete things, so that's the big red button, and you can also enable and disable, which is kind of neat too, because now I have this application where I have a bunch of functions, and I can take any of them, and at any time I can say, stop this one, edit the code, re-enable it when you're happy. So a pretty nice way to work with it. Am I going to show the last one? Yeah, I'm going to show last piece here. So I said we're not animals. We're not going to send just like raw strings around. Now we have a message type which is shared on both sides of the pipe. At the same time, like this is a bit ugly because I really have duplicate definitions everywhere. Is this possible for me to do something like share the types across my functions? And I would not ask that question if the answer was not yes. So the answer is yes. And so this is where like, the notion of the function app is also useful, because beyond the functions, you have a level upwards. And so if I go to the function app settings here, I have a couple of things. So you can see that you can configure app settings. So for instance, you could do things like how about connection strings? How about all these things? You can share them across all your functions. You could do, and you have one thing, so just for fun, I did this because you have this thing called a kudu. And so a kudu is apparently this animal, but kudu is also something here. So I'm going to go to kudu. And what kudu gives you is like a console, which gives you a direct view on what's happening on the machine where this is running, and you can start to do a couple of fun things. One thing I can do is I can look at my log files, and so my log files will be here. So for instance, I can look at both my functions, and I can look at grab rate, and here I could check like the log files I have. If you want them, you could upload it on your machine. You could do whatever you want with it. Same thing with a bunch of things. So I don't really care about the logs now. The one thing I want, let me go back up. The one thing I want is I want to go to the site. So this is where my code is living. And if I go to www.root, what I'm going to see here is that pretty much what I saw in the other screen. So grab rate now contains function JSON, project JSON, and run.fsx. That's the code we have been working on. And so what I want is I want to share a type. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create another script file, but I'm going to put it up one level in the hierarchy. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm simply going to pick that file and upload it. So here, that file exists. So let me show you the file, actually. The shared file is like simply the type I was talking about. So that file is here. I can just take it from my machine, and I'm going to just drop it into here. Where is it? This is not what I want. One sec. I'm just going to drop it into www.root. And if everything is going fine, no, it's not. What am I doing wrong? Here we go. So now I have my shared file here. So you could do this. So this is a trivial example, but this is the point here is that you can actually upload things. You could upload an exe. You could upload your own DLL. So you're not limited to only things on NuGet. You could do pretty much whatever you want. And here I can now fix my code to use this and do something like instead of defining my type locally, for instance, in grab rate, I can say like nuke this because I don't want this. And I'm going to do something like load, which I'm going to go from 2 levels up, and that's like shared.fsx. And now I can do something like open shared. And if I'm lucky, Now this should actually pick up that file, which is now going to be included as a type in my function, and the compilation succeeded. So it's like now I have a shared type which I can use across my function app if I want to. I'm not going to do on the other side of on the other function because I'm going to assume that you will trust me on this because you're good people. And so I'm going to stop it at that point on the demo. But like let's recap a bit on what we see. Like the first thing is like the smallest possible function you could do is this. Like it's a function app, so you need something to host it, and your function app is going to contain at least one. Actually, it could contain 0 functions, but normally 1, potentially many. A function is going to be code plus event. The code is going to be a script, which you write in whatever language you want, and like every time, and the function is simply going to run that script, and the event is going to be a binding to something which is going to be triggering that function, so defined in function.json. And the minimum is also an Azure storage account, because 1, it gives you log files, and 2, it's not necessary, but it gives you like very convenient way to, essentially, I just had to say like, I want a queue named X, the queue was there. So that's what it gives you. Beyond the minimum function, you can also use in and out binding. So in would be like on top of the trigger, I'm also going to be maybe reading from another queue. I'm going to be reading from a blob. And out would be I will be writing to a queue, to a blob. So you can define other resources your function might want to talk to. You can define dependencies using project.json to NuGet packages, and using Kudu or other ways, you can upload whatever file you want. So you have beyond the portal, you can do much more than just editing files on the portal. The consumption plan, which we picked from the beginning, is going to handle scaling for you. So if I decided to pick maybe many rates for many currencies, and my queue was getting killed by the work, the runtime would spin up a couple more consumers and start to deal with it and dequeue more stuff. And if the pressure went down, it would calm down. And finally, we saw that it's automatically deployed like every time you make a code change. So this is kind of what I think, hopefully this was useful, that this is what you need to know about doing a function if you do that. So one of the reasons I came across functions was because of a personal project of mine, which is FSIBot. So I put in quotes like real-world example. It's a real-world example in that like this application has been in production for like 3 years now, and it's actually it's working and it's doing things. So what it does is really entirely pointless. Like long story short, like FSIBot is a Twitter bot, and that Twitter bot allows you to send a message to Twitter to FSIBot. It will take that code, run it to the compiler, and send back the message to you. So I'm just going to show you that what this does. Like this is not very complicated. If I take this guy, I can do something like FSIBot, and I'm going to do something like maybe a classical one. I'm not going to do FizzBuzz because I've done it a couple of times. Maybe I could take a list, so that's F# code, and I'm going to do something like reverse that list. And because I'm really concerned with performance, I can also add a time, which is going to tell me like how long my code is going to how long it takes for my code to run. And so I'm going to tweet this. And now this code is going to go somewhere on the serverless world, like on Azure. And it's like at some point, it should be coming back to me with an answer, which is take that code, run it, and show me what the result is. So I'm going to, there is a bit of a delay on the response, so I'm going to go back to this, but we should see in a couple of seconds the result of that call. So this is what FSIBot does. So if I were to describe like the way the application works, what I try to do with this application is really this. I have a couple of things to do. It's like I have Twitter, so something is happening on Twitter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 things. It's like the first thing is I need to watch over Twitter and see do I have mentions. So first thing is somebody talking to me FSIBot. If I have a mention, 1 or more, I want to send them to the compiler to compile the code. And once I'm done with the compiler, I need to do a third thing, which is compose a nice message to my user and a tweet back, so send a response. So this is like in essence, like what the application is. So I have a nicer one here. Yeah, I still agree with myself. And so the way I'm going to go back a bit in history in what I did with FSIBot and how the project evolved. So the first version, code name I am so naive. I started to do this on a weekend, and I was cheap. I didn't want to put that much effort into it, and so I did it in the simplest way I could possibly do. I wrote some F# code. I created a top-shelf service, and then I took that top-shelf service and deployed it to an Azure VM. And because I didn't want to spend too much money on it, I took the cheapest possible VM I could find, which was like $12 a month, and I shipped it. So in a way, like this is a tiny, tiny monolith. Like I put everything in one place, even though I have many responsibilities. And so I shipped it. And so then what happened is like I trusted that. So obviously, taking a bit of a step back is like obviously the idea of taking arbitrary code written by arbitrary random people on the internet and running it on your machine might not be the wisest idea ever. And so what happened was something like this. Like after a week, I started to see a couple of very, very funky tweets coming in. So these are all the real tweets I got. Like things like, hey, can that tweet actually spin up a notepad on your machine? People did that. People tried to delete the current directory. People started to fiddle with threads, and even somebody creative wanted to kill processes. And because we are in F# functional language, used the pipe and did it in parallel to really be efficient about killing all the processes on the machine. So the short version is like I started to see many, many aggressive messages coming to the bot. And as a side effect is like the VM was essentially I started to see text messages, text files on my folders. The machine was burning. As a result, like the services were going down all the time, restarting, resending the same tweet 17 times to the same person. Nobody was very happy, so I thought I need to do something about it. So release 2 was a code name, like it's a mean world. The easiest thing I could do was really start to separate the responsibilities. And instead of one service, I did 2 services, still using top shelf, still using F#. But the first one was just grabbing the messages, and the second one was just running things in the compiler. What this gave me was the ability to start to shut one down. First, like it gave me the ability to... so essentially, the place where it crashed was the compiler, because this is where people did horrible things. So I wanted to be able to isolate that. So the compiler part was one separate service, and if it crashed, it was not taking down the part which was reading the messages. Now I had reading messages, put them in a queue, and like if the compiler crashes, that's fine. Like when it comes back up, it will pick up things from the queue. So I was in a much better place, still using VMs, still $12 a month, still one VM. And so this is kind of maybe a microservice architecture. So in that, like I could deploy my 2 services separately. So this is, I moved from my mini monolith to my mini microservices. And this worked for me. Like after that, so I fixed also some of the bugs. I added some security, some minimum security, and then it ran, and like it's been running like a champ for about 2 years, and everything was fine. And then, like maybe 3 months ago, I started to see problems. And so these ones, I don't know where they're coming from. But like somehow the service was crashing. And so this was a bit painful because you get what you pay for. And if you get an Azure VM for $12 a month, it's not very fun to RDP into it. Like the machine is officially half a core with like as much, probably less machine than my cell phone. So like trying to troubleshoot things and all this was not very fun. And so I was trying to fix things. And so I thought like this is not working. Let's try something else. I saw the Azure service, the Azure functions word pop up, and I thought, how about I try to rewrite it on an Azure function? And so this is what I did. And so the third release, which is like a nano service now, is using 3 functions. So it took me a glorious half a day to rewrite entirely. And that's really it. It's like I wrote my 3 functions. I don't need a VM. I don't need a queue. Like I had to do nothing in particular. I just wrote it and it ran. The thing which was nice too is like the other problem with the previous version was not only was it painful to RDP, but like creating a queue is not complicated, but it's annoying. Creating a service is not complicated, but I had to deal with deployments and all that stuff. So this was painful. This was just go to the portal, pretty much copy paste my scripts, run it, and it worked. So this is good. I'm not going to show you the details of the code, but all of it is on GitHub. So I'm still not learning my lesson because like one of the ways people really hit my machine hard is like if you have the entire source code for an application, it's also much easier to hack it. I'm still going to do it. I'm going to hope that people are not too mean to it, but like the whole code is there. So, and the way it looks is pretty much this way. So I have Twitter, And I have 3 functions, like one function called check mentions, which is just checking mentions. Like every 2 minutes, it's looking at Twitter and like, do I have a mention? Yes. If yes, send it to a queue. So that's on the left. And then the queue is going to be picked up by another function, process mention, which is, I'll let you guess, like a queue-triggered function. That function is taking the code, parsing the message. It's using pretty fancy packages, like, and everything worked. I was kind of surprised. Like, it's using the compiler service. It's using many things, and all of it worked. Shove it to a queue. And the third thing is like send a tweet, and that guy picks from the queue and send a tweet to whoever tried to ping FSIBot. Let's see actually if Discord. Let's see if my Twitter, if my bot came back with a. Yes, FSIBot came back to me and told me that my list reverse. So this is what I'm getting out of this, and it told me that my list reverse took 8 milliseconds to do. So it's a very good code. So that's kind of what you get out of FSIBot. So anyways, like let's get back to the slide for a sec. So what did I get? What is it that I liked about the functions on this example? It's like the one thing I really liked is like from an F-sharp standpoint, what I tend to do a lot is F-sharp is a really, really nice scripting language. It's lightweight. I have types. I don't have to write that much code, so I start to open a script, and I flesh out code, and oftentimes it's good enough, and I want to ship it in production. It's not very difficult to do so, but like in the case of FSIBot, what I will have to do is like take that script, make it maybe to a module or a class, then do something about top shelf to host it and all this stuff. So this is a bit annoying. I would want to be able to sketch, keep sketching the code in scripts, but also ship it in production easily. And functions give me directly that. Essentially, I can sketch out the domain in my scripts, just like I've been used to do, I've done since the past 5 years. But I can also very easily sketch out the architecture. And just in the same way I can write code in a script and see if it does what I want, I can just push the script and say, I want a queue. Pop, the queue is here. I want a hook. Pop, it's there. So this is a very convenient way to start sketching out an architecture fast and see if the application is doing what you want. Essentially, you can just write one of the points here was this diagram is pretty much the diagram I showed before, and that's if you ask me to describe the application, I would probably do this on a whiteboard. And what I did was I took that whiteboard and I wrote it in functions, and it was just working. So it's just like my sketch maps one-to-one to what I'm doing with the scripts and with the architecture. And this is pretty awesome. No impedance mismatch. I want a queue, it's there. I want something which does mentions, it's there. Nice. And as a side effect, or like maybe relatedly, what I can do then is like I can focus entirely on the code and the domain, and I can completely forget about the plumbing. It's like, who cares about how your queue is running? Who cares about all these things? Like, I want a queue, give me a queue, give it a name, and I want to work with it. I don't want. Here, like the moment you start to have to worry about things like plumbing is the moment where it's going to be less fun, and it's where you might take shortcuts because it's annoying. Like I should have done in the first place 3 services when I did it as a microservice. I didn't do it because I didn't want to spin up another queue and I didn't want to spin up another service. So it's like if it's difficult, it's going to be. You're probably going to take shortcuts and not do the right thing. If you have an infrastructure which allows you to do easily the things you should be doing, which is like using a queue or having 3 services if you need 3, you will do it. And so this is what I'm getting also with this. Is I can do the right thing, and it's making easy to do the things I want to do. I'm not going to show. Maybe I'm going to show it at the end. So the second benefit I got was my VM was pretty cheap. I mean, it's like $12 a month is not killing my bank. At the same time, like even though FSIBot is a tremendous success, there's like I'm not getting 1 million tweets a month, and so this is a bit sad because now I have a machine which is sitting there. Essentially, I'm probably paying like $2 per tweet. Or something like this. Like a big week would be 2 tweets, 3 tweets. So it's like, that's very expensive for a tweet, right? I would prefer to buy coffee or like buy other things with that money. And so it's a complete waste of resources. So this is not great. So one thing I liked about this is like on Azure Functions, you pay based on how much code you're running. And so what this means is like the unit is really 2 things. It's like how long does this take for the code to run? So if I have a tweet, if I have a single tweet in a month and it takes 10 seconds, I'm going to pay only for 10 seconds in that month. And the other unit is like time times how much memory is your code using. So as long as your code is short runs fast and doesn't use much memory, is like your bill is going to go down quite a bit. In this case, like you even get like 1 million requests for free per month and 400 gigabytes a second of resource consumption per month. So it's like essentially like FSI Bot went from $12 a month to zero. If I get like 1 million hits on FSI Bot, I might start paying a couple of cents. So this is a very compelling proposition, I think. Recommendations which are based on this. If you're going to pay by how long your code is running, is that you probably want to keep your functions fast. As in, like, so it's an incentive in a way of doing the right thing. If you write code like a pig and it takes 2 minutes when it should take 1, you're going to pay twice the price. If you want your bill to go down, just make your code faster. Same thing, like if you want your bill to go down, like use less resources and make your code less memory hungry. A couple of things to think about otherwise. So first, I would advise you to, in the first example I did, is like I could have put everything in a function. My sense right now is like the idea of a function is we make them as small as you can and don't hesitate to do very, very granular functions because it's very easy to connect and disconnect them. So think of it as tiny Lego blocks and make them small and combine them afterwards. Because you have automatic scaling, you should also expect concurrent execution. So I didn't run into problems with that, but I had a question the other day, which was like, am I guaranteed that if I have messages coming in a queue, am I guaranteed that they're going to be processed in order? And the answer is like, not quite. They're going to be picked from the queue in order they arrived. But like if the second message takes like less time than the first one to process, which is possible, and you have it scaled up and you now have like not one function running but 10 running concurrently, you're not guaranteed that things are going to be executed in the same order they come in. So you might want to keep in mind that every function you have you might have like 10 of them running at the same time. So keep that in mind. That might be important. By default, like use queues everywhere. That's kind of their recommendation, and like that's just dead easy to do, and it works very nicely. Another thing is like to keep in mind with functions is like functions are entirely stateless. It's like the trigger happens, the function runs, has no state, dies, finished. So this is something which will work in many cases, but which might not be obvious in some cases. For instance, on the FSI Bot example, every time I'm checking for new mentions of FSI Bot on Twitter, I'm asking essentially what are the 20 latest mentions I had. If I just do that, I'm going to respond many times to the same tweets because they will be the same 20 tweets I just checked 2 minutes ago and 2 minutes ago. So I would want some state, which is really like what is the last ID I processed. And so to do this, it's not very complicated, but like what I had to do was to really create a blob. And the function, like every time it runs, is going to read from that blob the last ID I processed. And when I'm done, I'm going to write to the blob the function I processed. So in that case, it's like I create actually state, but the state is persisted between the calls. I rehydrate it every time the function runs, which is kind of good. Because now is like if my so the problem with like in-memory state is like if my function crashes, all bets are off. In this case, is like my function can go down in flames. It will go back up, pick up things from the disk. I know exactly what state I had, and everything is fine. And that's I think what I had. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was the friction point. So I think it's probably clear at that point that I really like functions. It's like I really had a lot of fun with it. So that being said, is like they make some things very easy, specifically like taking a script and making it run in the cloud. Some things are less easy. So because everything I showed you so far has been like, let's take code which is somewhere on an editor in the cloud, change it and run it. So another way to say this is like what we have been doing is that we are making code changes directly on a live server all the time. We have had no tests. We have like no version control. We have nothing. And so this is, I know like some trends, like every 10 years, like whatever methodology you pick, you're going to be right again, but like still fixing live code on a server is probably still not cool again. So and the problem here is like now what's great is that I can work in the cloud very easily. What I would want to do is I would want to be able to work also locally with things like version control, like tests. I would want to use an editor which is not an online editor. And so that's the place where there is a bit of a friction. So the first, I mentioned one part which was working from GitHub or like working with source control. That part is actually dead easy and it's there like out of the box. Essentially, like if you go to your function app, you can say like, look, point it to the GitHub repository, and every time you push, it will just deploy. You can do that with a Dropbox folder. You can do that with a OneDrive folder. You can do that with a, there are even like things I didn't know about, but so you can deploy continuously from whatever you want. So that part is nicely solved. The part which is not great is working locally with the script. So I'm going to show you something which is the function CLI, which is the command line interactive. That's in pre-release, work in progress, so it's not quite working right yet. That's because it's not officially shipped yet, but like at some point, hopefully it will be awesome and everything will be nice again. So let me show you a bit how it looks. So I'm going to go back to code, because really what I would want is I would want to work from an editor locally. So let's close this, and I'll close this as well. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start using the CLI, the command line interactive for this. So let me view the command line, the terminal. So that thing is using npm, and so I can install it already on my machine. And so what I can do now is I have something which is func. And so if I do func, I'm going to see like they have like a sexy ASCII art for the command line. It's actually, I mean, it's completely a detail, but I kind of liked it. So and now, so what I get is I get a command line tool which is allowing me to work with functions. So what can I do with this? I can do something like this. I'm going to first create a directory, which I'm going to call like why not NDC London. So now I have this. I'm going to also go to that directory, and now I can do something like func init. And so this is going to create now in NDC London a couple of things for me. It's going to create like app settings, the host JSON, so the type of thing I would need for my function. And now I can start creating functions. So let's do one. I'm going to do something like func new. And so if I do that, it's going to ask me a couple of questions. The first question is like, what language do you want? So it's like, I don't want Batch. I don't want C#. I want F#. Let's go there. Hop. And the second one is like, what template do you want to use? So I'm going to pick a template. So blob trigger, no. I don't want a GitHub hook. Let's take an HTTP trigger. And how do you want to call it? I'm going to call it, let's say HTTPFS. Why not? And now, like what it created for me is like pretty much what we saw before on Kudu. Is like I have a function JSON file, I have a project JSON file, I have a run function, and this is using the template we saw before. So I have stubbed out like my function here and that function is doing a glorious like hello world. Like it's going to look for the message. If I have something which is a name, I'm going to say hello, blah, blah, blah. And otherwise, I'm going to tell you that message is not right, so on and so forth. Cool. So that function is here. Can I run it locally? I can. The way I would do that is I would say func run. I'm going to say which function I want to run. That would be HTTPFS. I'm going to say C because it's from the command line. And here I'm going to hope that this works out. I'm going to craft carefully by hand, hipster style, a message for this function. So this is going to be having name. Hopefully I'm not doing typos. And I'm going to pass a name, which is going to be, let's say, London. Hop. And I'm going to send it to my function. And so here what should be happening is like next step is it's telling me, hey, if you want me to run this locally, I need a server. Are you okay with me launching a server locally? And so here this is what's going to happen now is like a server is getting launched. And now in the background, like this is going to work with this function. So once it's spin up and running, like I see now that my code is running on my local machine and I can start to experiment with my function. For instance, if I want to change this to not hello, but I notice that people in this country look like they're saying something like heya, I'm going to do this, heya, and now if I run the same thing as before, I should be able to see a response which is going to be not hello, but heya. So this is neat because now I have my script. I can just work with the script. Everything is working locally. I don't have to worry about the server. I can just work on the code like in a very interactive fashion. The part I really don't like is this bit here. Like I have like red squigglies everywhere. This is obviously not quite what I want. If I have a statically typed language, it's a bit of a shame that I can't have IntelliSense on everything. And the reason for this is because the function has a lot of ambient DLLs which are loaded in the runtime, and like the script right now knows nothing about these. So I could make it work by hand, but I would have now to tweak this script, do all these things so that I can actually do something with it. So that's the part I don't like, is like I can work locally to an extent, but my scripts are now locally broken. So I'm hoping that at some point the story will get better on this, but at the same time, I think that is promising, and this also in preview, so take that as a preview, and hope that things are going to be great again very soon. Cool. Let me now go back to my slides and go to actually, so takeaways. For me, like the verdict would be, just like take a look at functions. Like I think it's the tool is just like super useful in a lot of scenarios. Like if you have anything like a job which is running every day, every week, somewhere is like this is a perfect case for using this. We had a case recently with a colleague where we want to check that if we have like new licenses being used for a particular application, you can write very easily a function which is going to check like the server where you have this and send you an email if a new license is being used. So in a ton of little scenarios, like it's very easy to do a function. I like them because they make it easy to do the right thing and sketch out an application. Like I can have a queue easily. I don't have to think about all these annoying details. Like I can just focus on the domain, focus on the code, and make it work. In a way, this is what I wanted the cloud to be. It's like I don't want to think about machines. I don't want to think about scaling. What I want to think about is domain and like getting an application to work. So this is, I love this thing. The thing I don't love is the local story. As I showed you, like it's not perfect, so hopefully it will be better soon. I want also to give hats off to the team because it's an awesome team at Microsoft. Like they are on Twitter, they're on GitHub, they answer to the pull request and all of this. So I have high confidence that that local story is going to be better, and the thing is getting better and better every week. And it's also the most fun I had coding in a while. Like I really, really have fun with this thing. The other thing is, like, I think it's a very good fit for F#. Like, people tend to talk about F# as a functional language and all these things. Like, that is true, but I think it's also an awesome Python with types on top, which gives me performance and all of these things. And so I can use the best of F#, which is scripts, which are nice, but I can also now get the infrastructure and get the same type of spirit, make things easy when they should be easy, get a rapid feedback. So the two things, I think, are a really, really good pair and work really well together. So take a look at functions. And this is what I had. So this is still my name. This is still like my website. I think on the next talk here is going to be on Rust and Elixir. That should be a good one. Later in the afternoon, if you want to talk about functional programming, if you want to chat, I think it's in the workshop room, which is over there. Come and talk to me or other functional or like not too dysfunctional people. Like come talk to us in that room. Like it's a free-form room where you can chat about whatever you want around functional. The repository is here. And I think that's what I had. So I will thank you for your patience. Thank you.